my parents divorced when I was 3 years old. At the time, my little baby brother was 1. And from around the age of 3 to 18, my parents had a quite medium to high conflict co-parent relationship. So the situation was that my brother and I would be with my mum from Saturday at 4 o'clock until Thursday after school. And then we'd be with my dad every week from Thursday after school. He'd pick us up and then he'd drop us to mum's at 4 o'clock on a Saturday. And that schedule was very rigid for my entire childhood.
All right. Hey, team. Welcome to another episode of Mediocre Dads, where being mediocre is a choice and you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. I'm your host, Quan. I go by Q, of course. And on this episode of Mediocre Dads, I am joined by a guest who is all the way from Australia, which, guys, I've had several guests on from Australia, and I just want to say it's awesome. Again, I say it every time, but it's awesome because I never thought I'd be talking to people from Australia. So it's amazing, and it's an awesome experience just to kind of really branch out and diversify myself like that. But on this episode, we are going to kind of dive into it's a similar topic of I'm sure you guys heard before, but on this perspective, her name's Bella, her perspective. I followed her on Instagram, and I saw her. She was on another podcast. I think it's Dads with Dads or something. I don't remember the exact title. And I reached out, and it was for me, it was kind of like one of those, I'm just going to reach out and, shoot for the stars and hopefully she responds. And sure enough, she did. And I was like, oh my goodness, she responded. It was amazing. And because, I've reached out to several different people and some people are, more Instagram, TikTok, whatever, famous than others in a lot of ways. And so when you're just starting out, there's that nervousness factor. So I was a little nervous when I reached out, I don't know, maybe she won't want to respond because I don't have a lot of followers or whatever the case might be. But she did respond, and she was like, "Hey, would totally love to come on your show." Took 2 months, but I'm awesome. It's her schedule's busy just as much as mine, but it was awesome, and we're finally here, so I'm super excited to have you on. But before we get into it, Bella, can you just kind of tell the audience who you are a little bit, just a brief background about yourself?
Of course. So firstly, just thank you for having me here, Q. It's really great to be on here, and I love podcasts and pages about dad, so really support what you're doing. My name's Bella, and aka A Kid with Two Homes. My page and blog, A Kid with Two Homes, is all about divorce from the kid's perspective, and all the topics that come out of that. So I created A Kid with Two Homes because I was a kid of divorce growing up from the age of 3, and I really felt like there was never anything out there for the kid from the kid's perspective. There's so many fantastic pages for moms and single dads and how you can co-parent, but there's never anything out there for the kid from the kid. And so then I put that out in 2021, and that's just exploded into this real project that I think I can make an impact on the world because there's such a missing space for a voice for kids with 2 homes. So that's where I'm at. And as a result, I love to talk to parents, mums and dads, just really about the importance of their role in their kids' lives, not only when they're going through divorce, but just generally, and how important their role is in their kids' lives. So that's a bit about me.
That's awesome. So, kind of diving right into it, and you said it right. You were a kid of being with divorced parents, and yes, like you said, right, there is always that perspective of single moms or co-parenting or single dads, right? But never the perspective of the kid who is actually experiencing the divorce or the one who is, I would say, is mostly impacted by parents separating or getting a divorce, right? And very few perspectives like, oh, my parents are divorced. It kind of is what it is. But I'm sure as you grow up, there were a lot of emotions and negative and positive of whether it was towards your mother, whether towards your father, or both at the same time, but just raw emotions that sometimes are never addressed or are broached. So I really enjoy and love what you're doing. And that's why, again, when I saw your page, I was like, And I read one of your blogs. I'm not gonna lie, it was a couple months ago, so I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I read one of them. I was like,
That's cool.
this is awesome. Like this is for someone to kind of be able to be that person to say like, hey, this is what it was like. This is how it impacted me. It really sheds the light on something that that I don't think is addressed enough, right? Because we always want to say, hey, Dad, are you okay? Hey, what are you going through? Or hey, Mom, are you okay? What are you going through? I know it's hard, being a single mother, but never, son,
True.
daughter, how are you feeling about this? What are your thoughts on this?
And that's it. And I actually call divorce a taboo but not taboo topic. You said it yourself, Hugh. You said, oh yeah, my parents are divorced, whatever. It's this first world problem that, so many people experience or at least know of, that we all kind of acknowledge, but it's not so bad that we harp on about it.
Mm,
But it impacts so many people's lives, whether it's actually your parents are divorced or a friend that's parents are divorced. And so they go between two homes and you can only see them on the times that they're with their mom because that's closer to your house. We all experience divorce in some sort of way. And I think that it can impact parenting so significantly, even when you might be the uncle of a kid who's got divorced parents, or, you might be the dad, whatever it might be. I think it's just this taboo but not taboo topic that we all need to kind of acknowledge and talk about. And, like you said, it's great that we check in on parents and stuff, but there's always, as a kid, and how I felt was people were telling me what I should do or how I should feel, or that's really hard, but never giving me a solution.
yeah.
And you can go and see a child psychologist or you can go and see a school counselor, but they don't get it. They don't understand what your unique position in your unique family is like. And so really just putting that on the page and kind of telling kids, hey, I actually get it. I went through it too, albeit in a different way because we're all unique. I think it's so important to chat about. And then as a result, it just impacts so many things that are so general to so many people's lives, like dads in girls' lives or dads in boys' lives or moms in girls' lives. So, it's just such an important topic that there's just so many things we can chat about that ultimately impact kids and what they end up being as adults.
Yes. So for those who are not familiar with your story in particular, and I know you've told your story several times before, but I would appreciate it if you could kind of give us a brief insight to your personal story, and then we can kind of go from there.
Absolutely, let's do it. So my parents divorced when I was 3 years old. At the time, my little baby brother was one. And from around the age of 3 to 18, my parents had a quite medium to high conflict co-parent relationship. So the situation was that my brother and I would be with my mum from Saturday at 4 o'clock until Thursday after school. And then we'd be with my dad every week from Thursday after school. He'd pick us up and then he'd drop us to mum's at 4 o'clock on a Saturday. And that schedule was very rigid for my entire childhood. Quite realistically, up until the age I was 23. So that happened from 3 to the age of 18. And then when I hit the age of 18 and I was experiencing my parents' divorce day in, day out, I was a messenger going between both my parents. I think it was maybe a couple of days before my high school graduation. I lost it. I just couldn't do it anymore. I had a quite literal breakdown to my parents that I could not deal with this conflict anymore. I could not be the messenger, and I wanted to start living my own life, irrespective of my parents' divorce. And I really honed in on those communication skills that I had built up throughout my parents' divorce. And I sat them both down and I said, I can't do this anymore. What are you going to be able to do for me? And my parents listened. I'm not saying that I never had these conversations with my parents before. I believe I did, just not in such a significant way that we actually saw change. And so after that high school graduation, about 6 months later, I had my 18th birthday, and I had both my parents there because they started to realize that I needed them to be able to be in the same space and be amicable, not for them, but for me. And then that snowballed into quite a few events, and my parents started to accept that they were co-parents and accept their differences. And now we're at a stage where they've done a complete 180 and I can be comfortable with both my parents in my home. And they can be there for me and my brother, irrespective of their divorce. So it's a very interesting, that was a very short version of the story, but that's where we're at. So I've experienced that high conflict situation, but also the amicable divorce and how it can impact your kid. But apart from that, the entire time I've had a very, very close relationship with both my parents. I adore them and I love them, and they've been my biggest role models and guides. And so when that was conflicted with their conflict, that was really difficult for me as a kid to be like, I adore and love this person so much, but they're hurting me in some ways because they can't move past their pain. And the way that that impacted me and the way I maneuvered through that, I think is something that I love to talk about, because I think there's a lot of kids going through the same thing, and they either deflect from their parents and say, well, you're doing that to me, I don't want to have a relationship with you, or they have an attachment to their parents and then really struggle. Anyways, on top of all that, I ended up going to university and I studied a Bachelor of Psychology and a Bachelor of Law. I graduated with both of those, so I've got the psych background, but I'm currently practicing as a lawyer, and do this on the side. So that's just a bit about my story.
That's awesome. First and foremost, you're a lawyer. That's awesome. That is amazing. That is a very I imagine it's very difficult to go through both psych and law at the same time. I guess they probably have there's a little bit of cohesion there, but still, nonetheless, pursuing those that is very difficult. And so congratulations to you on that in that regards.
Thank you. Thanks
yes,
so much.
of course. So I want to kind of go back in when you mentioned, from the ages of essentially 3 and all the way up until 18 is you had that rigid schedule with your parents, and you kind of played messenger. So your parents, and I guess it's obvious, but I'll state the obvious here. They had that much disdain for each other that they couldn't be in the same room even after years of just doing living that schedule of like, hey, I'm dropping the kids off to see you, and I'm dropping the kids off to you. Like, it's amazing to me that adults especially can have so much disdain for each other that there's not, and especially for two adults who loved each other at one point, to be like, I don't even want to see you. And so like I try to understand and put myself in say the husband's shoes, or even the wife's shoes in that regards, to say like, okay, what could it be so have me so angry and just so at this other person that I just don't want nothing to do with them. I don't need necessarily details, but what was that emotionally like for you, especially when you were, say, 14, 15, and you're just like, I don't understand why my parents don't love each other.
Yeah, that's a really hard one, because it's way more complicated than just looking at it like, oh, my parents don't like each other, so I'm just going to have to maneuver through this. That's not how a kid feels. That might be textbook what somebody wants a kid to feel, but that's not how they feel. So I would say, okay, let's use the example of pick up, drop off. So my parents were in a situation where they would both drop us off or pick us up. And so inevitably they would have to see each other. Not always would it end up in a fight, but sometimes, it might end up in a bit of bickering, or it might end up in a bit of conflict about a question that my dad would ask, and would be like, well, I don't want to talk about this now, or whatever it might be. And so that situation was always a very high anxiety for my brother, and because we were like, what's going to happen today at pick up, drop off? Then you've got the other factors that mum's purposely running late for dad, who's been waiting there for an hour early because he just wants to see his kids, or dad's been stuck in traffic, so mum's waiting there and she's going to not be very happy when we're late. So there's always those things that are going on in kids' heads around those specific situations. But then you've got the added emotion of, I can't wait to see my dad, but oh my God, I'm going to miss my mom because she's going to be all alone for the next 3 days and I'm with my dad. So you feel this, I'm so excited, but I'm also really sad, and I don't know how to feel. I feel really pulled between my parents. And why can't they just bloody be together? Because that would make my life so much easier. And my God, the amount of times that I just question, how did this happen? How did my brother and I come and have so much love in our hearts throughout our lives? But really, I didn't think my entire childhood that I was born from love, because all I saw between them was the opposite. So how how was I supposed to know that despite my parents' divorce, I was born out of love, and this is just our circumstances? And it took me quite a while. I can't remember the exact age, but I do remember the very first time my dad told me, like, you were born out of love. And I just remember crying because I feel like crying right now because I still don't, like, it's hard to have those experiences and then really truly believe that. And that breaks your heart because you think, wow, my parents did love each other one day and they loved each other enough to create these two miracles with my brother in human form. That's amazing. But then we've had all this, very sad conflict afterwards. And so for a kid to really conceptualize that and, understand that no matter what, you are loved and you are loved by your parents, despite the circumstances now, is a really difficult thing, but also can be a really beautiful thing once they come to realize that. And I think that's where parents come in to the communication aspect with their kids, of really making them know that they are loved and they were born out of love.
So with that, or the feeling and the emotion of love, right? And so I'll give you my personal story and my association with love and why I have a difficult time with truly understanding what love is. So I was adopted at the age of 2. I have an identical brother, twin brother, and we were adopted at the age of 2 by an all-white family who loved us, cared for us, and who I see as our parents in my family to this day. And growing up, right, I always had this fantasy in my head that maybe one day that my birth parents would just show up, almost like, like a Kool-Aid man busting through the wall, and said, "Hey, I'm here to pick y'all up. Sorry, it's been a while, but hey, I'm here to pick you up." And it would all kind of be like that, the end of the fantasy story where just like, and we all just kind of lived happy ever after. We loved each other and it was great. And I understood me and I understood what it really means for a parent to love their son or their daughter, and what it is for kids to love their parents, right? And so for me, that never happened, by the way. So it never happened. But so as I grew up, when my parents, who I call my parents now, said, "Hey, I love you," I understood the words, but I never understood the feeling of, how could you love me? Like I'm not really yours. You know what I mean? And it's not to say it's their fault, but it's one of those things of like, how do you know you love me, right? Like how what was it? 1, 2, Derek, Danielle, and we 3 other siblings, right? And one of them was adopted as well. And it's like, how do you know that you guys love me, and what does that mean for me? How do I reciprocate that? How do I say I love you too for adopting me and giving me clothes? I guess, like, awesome. I didn't, but like, how do I know what love is? So I struggled with that for so long until and for some it might be sad, but the first 3 or 4 years I was married to my wife, I again loved my wife because I understood what it, after some time you're supposed to love this individual, especially after dating and then getting married. But it was one of these moments. I'm sitting on my couch and I kind of look over at my wife and kind of realization set in of me. I was like, oh, this feeling right here is what love is. This is what love is. This is what it means to really mean to love somebody or care for somebody, to say to them, no, I love you. And like, when I say that I love you, I'm willing to do anything for you. And so that feeling was even more amplified when I have my 2 daughters, because, when I see them and I come home and they're waiting for me in my garage so I come into the garage, open the garage door, close it, go to the pantry, open the pantry door, and there's 2 dogs and my 2 daughters just standing there waiting, like, "Daddy!" And they're like, they come hug me, and I'm super excited, and it makes everything feel worth it and amazing. And again, that feeling creeps back up, and I say, okay, now I know what love is now, but I never really understood what it was growing up. So I say that in my own story to ask you, when did you have that real moment of, no, I know what love is, and that, hey, I know that my parents love me?
Thank you for sharing that, Q. That's a really beautiful way to explain your story, and I'm really happy for where you are now and that you've
Thank you.
been able to experience that. And I think that like your story just rings true to how unique everybody's understanding of love can be. And that's why I love to come onto podcasts and chat with other kids of divorce and people like you and any all different circumstances about their experience, because we're all so unique. Um, I, I get, of course, on that tangent, my experience of love has been um, different again, in the sense that I've compartmentalized the idea of love.
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though my love for my dad is between my dad and I, and that's a type of love. The love I have with my mom is another type of love. And then I thought, that's love generally. You've got your parents. I never
Mm-hmm.
felt that connected from them together, streamlining to me, and that was because of my circumstances. But what I realized could also be love was sacrifice, and that's something that I didn't feel as though I got in terms of parental love from my parents when they were having conflict with each other and not realizing that putting me in the middle wasn't love, but
Mm-hmm.
their own pain above their love for me. And that wasn't intentional. That doesn't make my parents bad people. It makes them human, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. But I very much separated that and said, okay, I have my love for my dad and my love for my mom, and that's separated from that pain. But then, similar to you, Q, I met my now husband when I was 11 years old, and it's a long story, but we met on a beach, and then we just became very good friends, and then we started dating when we were 14. Don't know how my parents allowed it now that I'm an adult, and I'm thinking when my kids are 14, there's no way, but that's what our story was. And then I really truly grew up not believing in that idea of love through marriage. I didn't think that, marriage worked. And if the situation with my parents was as such, why would I even take the risk? Why would that be something that I would want to put myself through, and potentially kids? I just was absolutely, I didn't believe in it. I couldn't, because that just wasn't what I wanted for somebody else, what I had experienced. But then you grow and you mature and you learn to know that your life is unique and that love can be different types of love. And that's when I really realized that compartmentalized thing in my mind, that I don't see love as one thing. And one thing led to another, and I got married last year to my beautiful husband, who
Oh,
has been
congratulations.
in my life for so long. Thank you so much, but not without the work. And now I come home every day after work, and I see my husband and I see the love that we've created and the home that we have. And I think this is a different type of love altogether. And
Hey,
I know love in this sense now. But I haven't not known love before. I've just known it in a different way. And so I think if somebody sat me down, or if I were able to listen to this podcast between you and I, Q, and know that my experience of love could have been different to anybody I was talking about, because every kid I looked at school didn't have the same experience as me. And I thought, oh, I'm different, or my family's broken, which I hate that term. But that's not true, because we all experience so many different types of love. And when you finally find your idea of love, that is the most beautiful thing. And nothing makes me happier for somebody else.
that's that's awesome. I love that. You know, I will say I similar. I met my wife when I was in seventh grade. She was in sixth grade. And I tell this story
Wow.
all the time. Yeah, it was the very first time I met her. But how I met her, right? So again, I will say, and I've told this story a few times. I have a twin brother. So first time I met her, I went out, just happened to leave the classroom because I need to go to the bathroom. Need to go to the bathroom. And I I walk out and I see my brother talking to this girl. I walk up to him and I see him like, hey, what's going on, bro? We dap it up, whatever, do our thing. And, whatever. And then she kind of walks away and I was like, man, hey, she's kind of cute, but like, our 3 rules, right? I won't get into our 3 rules at the time. Young men. And so he goes, yeah, I know. Dab it up. We go our separate ways. Fast forward to my freshman year, or no, I'm sorry. It was her freshman year, my sophomore year, and it's a homecoming, and my brother's playing. He played football, so I'm going up to the stands, and I see one of my buddies. I dap him up. He's sitting with some girls. He's like, "Come join us." Sure enough, I sit next to her, and I'm like, "Hey, we kind of chat, whatever, but whatever the case might be." So after the game, there's the dance. I think I'm too cool to go to the dance, so of course I'm not going. But before I leave, I give her a hug, and then after the hug, it's one of those hug kiss things. So I like hugged her, and then I kind of kept her here, and I kissed her. I thought I was the man. I thought I was like, oh, I'm so cool. So that's a Friday.
I love it.
Fast forward to that Monday, me thinking I'm Patrick Swayze at this point, right? Like I got the girl. So I go over to her lunch table with her and a few friends. I flip the chair around. I sit down, and I get up close to her, and I say, hey, look, so what are we gonna do? Like, what is this for us, right? Her friends here are speechless. I'm thinking I'm the man. She looks at me in the eye and she says, I'm actually good. Like, I don't think so. I'm like, just heart sunken. Like, what the heck just happened? I thought I was the man. I thought I did the thing. And sure enough, I didn't. And so like, it only amplified my my interest in her, of course. And so for me, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this girl my girlfriend. And so she was dating, she was dating other people. I had dated one or a girl or whatever. So 2 girls actually. I dated somebody. It is high school. We're all, dating, whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And she's dating one of the kids on the basketball team who's one of my teammates. And different person in high school, I promise, completely different person in high school. And I remember telling him one day, I said, hey man, when you and her break up, I'm just going to let you know now, like, she's going to be mine. And he was this like real nice, kind dude. And he was like, oh, ha, kind of chuckled. And I was like, no, I'm very serious when I say this. And like, this is how committed I was to this. And so they broke up, and I knew when they broke up, and right afterwards, because I had kind of been laying the groundwork, and sure enough, we started dating, and then that was 2000. What was that? 2000 June or July? It was July 17th of 2011, and we've been together ever since. So
wow.
That I understand. And look, and trust me, I don't understand my father-in-law because like I love him because I appreciate how he could, let me date her and then even marry her because we got married. I was 19, she was 18. And so we got married really young. And so
very young.
My father-in-law, I don't know how he was just like, yeah, you are the one for her. And I see that. And yes, you can marry my daughter. Because if I was in his shoes, personally, I would have been like,
now you have 2 daughters.
No. Yeah. And if my daughters came home one day and they said, hey, Dad, look, I think I'm going to marry this guy. And I would have been like, oh man, like, and this is like, it's a deep belly laugh because I would laugh in their faces and I would be like, yeah, okay, you tried it. Yeah, so adorable. Go to your room now.
And my dad was like that. Don't get me wrong, my dad was like that. He literally had my husband's name in his phone in brackets, capital letters, Bella's friend, until maybe the year we got engaged. I think.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was literally the year we got engaged. I was 23, and he'd had his name in his phone since we're 15.
Hilarious. Oh man, oh that's awesome. It's so amazing.
You gotta love it.
Oh yeah. I when we grew up in a very Christian home, so both of us did, and so we were teenagers, doing what our bodies like to do, and what male and females like to do. And when he found out, heartbroken. And I remember I had to go see him. It was, hey, you need to go see him. So I go to her house, I knock on the door, ring the doorbell. Her mom answers the door with her there, and she's just kind of like, just like, oh my goodness, pure fear. She's like, why did you actually show up? You know what I mean? And her mom is like, oh, you're in trouble. Oh man, you are in trouble. And so I'm like, yeah, I suppose, right? Because so she goes, he's waiting for you in the den. So I go into his den and I say, hey, sir, and he sits me down and we have a long conversation. I don't ever tell people what that conversation actually looked like. That's between me and him. But we had that conversation, and that was one of my first glimpses into what it is what it's like to love somebody so much, and to look at this person who and like, hey, I don't know if you're going to be the one who's going to love my daughter for the rest of her life, but I sure hope you are, because if you're not, man, internally there are evil things that I would do to a person if they hurt my kids. You know what I mean? Like, and at me now, I know I understand those feelings completely. Right?
You get it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it completely. So it was a crazy life, but I completely resonate with you, because like you said, at a young age, to find that person, and you don't know if that person's going to be it, but still to find that person and be like, hey, you've been with me for so long, you know everything about me, everything, my quirks, my flaws, my successes, everything about me. So I thought that was amazing, because I resonate with you completely, and I share that experience with you as well.
And it's hard to find people who resonate. It honestly is sometimes, because it's such a unique, beautiful thing, and we're blessed in that sense. But and you can still empathize with other people who have met their loved ones later on in life. But when somebody goes through all your pain as well with you, that is something extremely unique. And when they can really understand the core of you, your struggles in being the person you are, I think that when you eventually do grow up and become a parent, as you have, and I am yet to be, I just think that our experiences together, but also my pain and his pain, and also our love that comes together, will so heavily influence our children's lives, based off our experiences. Which is why I think we both do what we do, because we want kids who come after us to maybe potentially not experience what we experienced, but have a better life, and their parents to be equipped with more tools than we have experienced.
Absolutely. So sorry, I know we kind of went around in a rabbit hole over there, but
no, it's great. It's very contextual.
So for yourself then, even so, your brother, right? Because you weren't the only one experiencing this, right? It was you and your brother. So your brother, all by the time he was able to see, hear, and understand really what was going around him, this was normal for him. You guys, his parents being separated, or I'm sorry, divorced, if you will, right? But again, not together. So did you ever talk to him, and like, did you guys ever have a private conversation where you just like, hey, like, this is what's going on. This is what I'm feeling. This is what you're feeling. But like, this is just, how do we fix this type thing? Did you guys ever have that type of conversation?
Yeah. So anyone who knows me knows that the closest person to me, other than my husband now, and is my brother. And he was actually my man of honor at my wedding.
Awesome.
I refused to go with the status quo, because the closest person to me was my brother. Why would he not be standing up there next to me? And I think that's testament to the childhood that we had and the relationship that we now have. And I had a blog on Siblings, actually, where I don't necessarily delve too far deep into our relationship, but my perspective of this world is that it's always been my brother. Through all the highs and the lows, it's been me and my bro. And without him, I don't think I would be the person that I am today, and I don't think I would have so much grace in looking back on my childhood, because I had him. And even though we went between two homes, and that was transient, he was my constant, and I thank God every day for him. And the reality is I took the role of the big sister, and I very much had the purpose, and I very much felt like my purpose in life was to protect my little from all that I was feeling, and all that we were experiencing. I just didn't want my brother to feel what I was feeling. And so I took on that communication role. I took on that messenger role. I took on the, listen, Luki, this is okay. This is what's happening, and this is what we're going to do. I took on the organizational role. I took on this is what we're going to get mum for her birthday, because we need to get this for dad, and we need to do this, and we need to fix the schedule this way. I very much took on the protector role. And so those conversations were, often had. But then there was other times where we didn't have to have a conversation. We just give each other the look and know exactly how we were going to handle a situation or how we felt. And especially with a twin brother, I'm sure you can empathize with this, but it's incredible how if I could make a candle and it be the smell of my childhood, only my brother would be able to identify that. Nobody else would know what that candle would smell like. It's an incredible bond that only you guys get. And you can't explain that. And you can't let anybody else into that little shared experience. And so I think that having my brother was probably the biggest miracle of my life. And being able to talk with each other and go through those experiences, but also to have our parents have two very different kids at the same time. I think there's ways that I regret shielding my brother from a lot of my parents' conflict, because he didn't get to experience that. And then when I moved out of home, although things are much better now, he's really had to step up. And I had a real difficulty that I was abandoning my brother, because I'd protected him all this time, and now I just go off and live my own life as I should. And now he has to step up to the plate. How's that fair? But with a lot of help and support and a great younger brother who's very capable of looking after himself, I realize now that that's okay. But it's incredible when you have the opportunity to go through some of this pain and some of these experiences with somebody else who, you can either protect, or you can look to, or you can just at least have a relationship with. It's incredible to be able to look back and think, I had him, and this is what we got through together.
That's amazing, because as you mentioned, yes, my twin brother and I, we are not as close as we once were. And so for me and my brother, being twins, everything he did was compared to me, as in saying, if Queese does it, that means Quan does it. If Quan does it, that means Queese does it. And so there was never this idea of individualism or of I'm my own person. It was always like we're basically conjoined twins, and that's how everybody saw us, as we were one entity, not two people. And so after a while, for us, we kind of separated, because we wanted to build our own paths and create our own futures, if you will, rather than constantly being compared to our brother, whether it was negative or positive. It was just kind of be like, I don't want you to only, when you see me, see my brother. I want you to see, like, oh no, that's Queese right there. That's just who he is. Oh no, that's Quan. That's just who he is, right? And in some hindsight, they probably did see us that way, because we were twins, so they had to. But for us, our perspective, our view was, no, they only saw us as one entity. So in high school, we actually kind of like we made it. It was a very, there was no conversation, but it was a very direct, like, hey, I'm gonna do my thing over here, you're gonna do your thing over here, and at one point we'll come back together. But we never really had that coming back together moment, because now, being 29, almost 30 years old, later this year, we're kind of like, how do I rebuild that relationship with someone that I decided that I don't want to be like anymore, right? It's so hard, because it's our innate nature is to either argue with each other, or or just do have surface level talk, because if we go below that surface, so it's surface level, then it's arguing, but then below arguing, it's kind of like, what's that look like? Like, what's that those emotions that we've hidden for so long? What does that look like for us, right? So it was really
Yeah.
weird. We haven't done that yet, and I pray one day that we will. I definitely think in the future we will. But still, it was one of those things where it's just like, we wanted to go our separate ways because we felt like we didn't want to be always constantly being compared. We didn't like being compared to each other. So I'm envious of your
Which
relationship.
is so understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, because I even tell my daughter, my oldest, her name is Nevaeh. She's 6 years old, and her younger sister, who's 1 and some change, she's going to be 2 in October. Her name's Eden, and I tell Nevaeh all the time. I said, hey, listen, your responsibility as a sister is to love and protect your sister at all costs. It's like, there is no other relationship that you will have, or you could have in the future, that is going to be like you and your sister, or between you and your sister. I said, so like, I was like, cherish that moment with your sister. And I know she's only 6, and so she might not completely understand to the depth of what I'm talking about, but still, it's something that I always try to remind her of, like, hey, like, who has your sister's back? And she's like, I do. And I'm like, right, like, that's you have your sister's back. You protect your sister. If mom and dad are not there, you have your sister, and you take care of your sister always. Like, don't let people come between you and your sister because you want to fit in, or you want to be cool, or you just want to feel like, that individual idea of you. No, you and your sister's relationship is inseparable. There's nothing that you and your tie you and take you and your sister. Yeah.
That's it. And despite what trials and tribulations your relationship might go through, the reality is that always sticks. And I actually think you might say, yes, she's only 6, but these are the developmental years. And psychologically, we know that these developmental years are so important to getting those pillars to their understanding of relationships. And so it's vital that parents are talking to their kids and communicating in an age-effective way, in an age-appropriate way with their kids about the importance of relationships and what to expect. And it's really hard then. Sometimes we know that in our early developmental years, and we have that bond, but then we might separate from those relationships later on in life, but then ultimately they might come back together, which is what I also pray for your relationship with your brother Q. But the thing that sometimes gets us to that point is shared experiences and that connection of, hey, we know what that candle smells like if we were to make one, because that was our childhood. And it's even magnified by the fact that you're twins and that you went through the same things at the same age, and your developmental years were alike, despite you also being individuals. There is no doubt that connection underlies that surface level arguing. Deep connection is rooted in your developmental years and rooted in those years that you were ultimately. And no matter what, no matter how independent you are and individualistic as you both are, which you should be, you'll always be tied by the fact that you had those shared experiences and you were interdependent at one point in time. And that's healthy, and that's not a bad thing. Or, siblings go through different times, and my brother and I, I'm sure, will go through different phases in lives. He's living his best life in Europe right now while I'm at home, and I'm so happy for him, but we're so different at this point in time. But I know at the end of the day, deep down, we are connected because of our shared experiences and because of the love that we hold, that's ultimately rooted back in our developmental years. But I think siblings are a phenomenal topic to talk about, and I think that if we can push that onto generations coming up, that you've got each other's, and siblings aren't always related. I've got cousins that I call my sisters because they all are sisters. If I really think about it, they were there when my brother was there. They were there in childhood. They were there in my developmental years. They're there. So I use that term siblings very fluidly because we have so many different important people in our lives.
That's so true. I always thought, well, I wouldn't say always, but I was very fortunate, right? So me and my twin brother were adopted, and then I have an older brother who was also adopted as well. And so I was able to understand, like, okay, this is my brother. So my mom, when she was in her first marriage, she had a son and a daughter, and then she got married to my dad, and they adopted three kids, which was myself, my twin brother, and then my older brother. And so, like,
Yeah.
I have this family of just different siblings, right? But I still call them my siblings. And so, a funny-ish story. I guess funny to me though, right? I was walking into a Walgreens, and I was with my sister. She drove. She's older than I am. And I was walking into Walgreens, and one of these guys he was a little older, but I knew who he was. We've hung out before. We play basketball, or we just hang out, whatever the case might be, in the neighborhood. And so I'm walking into the Walgreens. He's walking out of the Walgreens, and he sees me and my sister, and he kind of looks over at her. She's not paying him any mind, but I'm kind of just situational awareness, seeing this, and he sees me, and so as I'm kind of walking, he kind of pulls me out, and he's like, "Oh," he dashed me up. He's like, "Hey, is that your girl?" And I was like, "No, bro, that's my sister." Like, it's just kind of like a natural thing, like, "Yo, like, dude, don't be weird."
Yeah.
Like, but like, we look completely different, but like, so I can understand this idea of like, oh, that's got to be his girlfriend, right? Like, I was like, it's like, no, don't be weird, that's my
Yeah.
sister. He's like, oh, my bad. I'm like, yeah, all right, man. So I go inside, and there's just, in my mind, I'm like, what was that all about? What, you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
it's just how how I grew up, where it's just like, that is my sister. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. There's nothing that can change that. Like, that's my sister. We
Yeah.
may not be related by blood, but that's just, again, that's my sister. So this is the easiest way I could put it.
Yeah.
So I totally resonate and understand what you mean, the importance of siblings, and how, like, the connection it's a matter of connection. It's not just we have the same parents, and and I was born this year and you were born that year, and that makes us siblings and brothers. No. It's our connection with one another, and being able to say, like, no, that person, this is where that person holds in my life, and so I totally
That's
get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost,
They're great, aren't they?
yeah, they are. No, they are. They really are. They really are. Like, truthfully, they really are. Almost coming to an end here. I wanted to ask you this final question, and that question is, well, I lied. It's not the final question. There's going to be one more question, but this is the real final question, if you will. I wanted to ask you. So when at 18, when you said that you and you had that kind of that moment with both of your parents, we sat down and said, "Hey, listen, I need you here for me. You need to get over your crap, if you will, and I need you here for me." And they showed up to your graduation, for you at your graduation together, if you will. What was that like for you emotionally, especially after that, where conversation, where that conversation truthfully could have gone left or right? Could have gone really bad, where they're like, "Hey, you just don't get it, and we're not going to change," or with the way, obviously, could go the way that it did. But what was that moment like for you when you were able to see them basically both together, more or less, for the first time, where they necessarily, I don't know if they're arguing, I imagine they weren't, but at your graduation, and you were just like, this is all I wanted. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So I think I'll use the example. So the graduation was interesting, and the events thereafter were interesting, but I still had an extreme high anxiety about it, because I couldn't believe it. It just wasn't a thing that settled, and it was like, oh, I feel so free. It was like, this
Yeah.
can't be true, because it's never worked, and it's not going to
Yeah.
work, and it's all going to blow up. And that was the reality. And like, people are like, oh, you must have felt it. It's like, actually, reality was that I didn't for quite a while. But I think the point that we're trying to get at here, and the question that the purpose of this question is, I actually felt it the day I got married, because I always thought that I would have to have two weddings. That was the extent of everything. I thought, there is no way that I'll be able to have one wedding. I always had two birthday parties growing up, because
Oh, wow.
we just did not do one event. It had to be two. And so I just inevitably thought, if I would ever get married, which I never thought I would, it would inevitably have to be two. And it'd been enough years between that conversation and things not absolutely blowing up at my wedding where I thought, this is real. And this is the moment in my life that I never thought would happen. And it's actually incredible because I think it's marked by a very specific moment on my wedding night. I was having my father-daughter dance with my dad, and halfway through, he went and got my mom, and the three of us danced together. And that, you could not have told me in my wildest dreams that that was even possible. And there was no drama in the room because everybody had known what we'd gone through. And my poor brother, was sitting on the bridal table just sobbing. My husband was consoling him because it just was this impossibility in our hands. And to have seen that happen, and now I genuinely look at these photos weekly because I still can't believe that it happened. It's this feeling of, wow, we made it. But also this relief of, that's love for me. That was my parents saying, my pain is less important than my love for you. And that feeling, not only did that lift the weight that I felt on my chest and the immense responsibility that I felt like I had over my parents, over their divorce, over my brother, over protecting everybody. That was insanely lifted. But I also felt so proud that we had gotten there, that having a conversation with my parents had streamlined into that result. And, it's not because of me, and it's not because I had that one conversation. There were so many people involved in allowing that moment to happen, including my parents, including other people that had a big influence on their relationships, etc. And now I can look back with so much grace and gratitude that that was the end result. Albeit it wasn't without a lot of pain and a lot of hard work. And that's what I want to hone into my listeners and to my readers, that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but it's also not all grey clouds. But to get from grey clouds to sunshine and rainbows is hard work. And everybody has to come to the table. It doesn't just happen overnight, and it doesn't just happen by clicking your fingers. So you've got to put in the work, and you've got to get down to what are the real issues here and how can we move forward as a family, even if you've separated.
That is, man, I can only imagine. So when you mentioned, the father-daughter dance, I think I like to plan in the future. I think to myself, like, is my daughter gonna love me? Is she still love me? You know what I mean? Is she gonna be mad at me? Or are we gonna be, for some reason, am I not gonna be there? Is this just gonna be a moment of just like, I don't know, like, is she just gonna be fed up with me, right? I don't get me wrong, I can be annoying, I can ultimately be a dad, right? But I just think to myself, like, throughout all these years, right? Like, at one point you just gotta despise me so much that you just don't want nothing to do with me. And that's the cynical way of looking at it. And, it's probably not going to be that way, but still sometimes in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if? And so it makes me happy to hear, brings real joy, genuine joy to my heart to hear, that moment where you were able to have with your dad, and then especially your mom, right? Because I imagine there were smiles on their faces at that moment, and it was almost like I'm trying to picture it in my head, but basically and I might be speaking for you, so forgive me, but I imagine it's just kind of like you were a little girl dancing on your dad's shoes and just looking up at both of your parents, and you're like, this is all I want. This is all I ever wanted. It's all I ever imagined. That's it. It's a genuine, beautiful thing. I have a picture in my head. I'm a very visual person, so I can imagine, I can picture that in my head. Because again, why I relate to that is because all I imagine is if my birth parents ever just came, and I don't get me wrong, I know who they are, but if they ever just came together and they sat down and just hugged me or whatever, said, hey man, look, we're sorry, we're 15 when we had you guys, we didn't know what to do, and they said, we're so sorry, but we love you, and whatever the case might be, we're always here for you. I would be a small little boy again, sitting there just thinking like all I ever wanted to know was just that you cared about me. Even though, you couldn't be in
That's
my
it.
life, all I needed to know was that you cared about me.
That's
And
it.
so I appreciate you sharing. I, 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 I have one final question, and I promise this is my final question.
Cool.
Because this is a dad podcast, so I do want, it is important that I do kind of take a moment to hyperfixate on the dads for a second. Your
Yeah.
relationship with your dad, and this is really going to be a question for me, and even for my listeners who are girl dads themselves. Your relationship with your dad, right? What is that like? What is that? How do you for because you're older now, obviously you're married, you're living your own life, right? And if you will, and your own relationship. But growing up, and how you saw your dad and how you envision your dad, right? Like, what was that like? Because as a girl dad myself right now, sometimes I try to imagine what it's like for my daughter when she sees me, and I don't know if it's fear, I don't know if it's anger, I don't know if it's sadness, I don't know if it's joy, I don't know if it's happiness. Like, I can kind of assume sometimes, right? But like, ultimately, what is it that you feel when you see or hear your dad's voice? What is that? Because I do care about the emotions. Emotional intelligence is very important to me. That's why I ask about what you feel. So what is it that you feel with that relationship with your dad, and how is different from obviously the relationship with your mom?
Yeah. I adore my dad, and my relationship with my dad is extremely unique in our own sense, but extremely close. And again, that's not without extreme hard work. But as a little girl, I just idolized my dad. And I said this in my speech at my wedding. I said, Dad, you were the first man I ever loved. And he taught me what I should expect from a man in my life. And as a result, I believe that I have the confidence and the love for myself and the respect for myself because of the love that my dad showed me in those seriously important developmental years. I've never feared my dad, but I've always respected my dad. But that idea of respect and that idea of fear and that idea of love has changed so much throughout my childhood because your little girl is always going to look to you and think, Dad, you're amazing. You're big and strong and you look after us and you do all these things. And wow, Dad, there's no one that knows anything more than you. But then as you grow up and the reality is your dad's just doing his best. He's made mistakes. There's more mistakes that he's going to make, but he loves you. And that is what my relationship with my dad's premised on, that no matter what mistakes he's made, no matter what he's done in the past, what he'll do in the future, I know for a fact my relationship with my dad has been built on a foundation that's so strong that nothing can knock our relationship down. And that's because I was actually thinking about this morning, and as I say, I've literally got a text message from my dad saying, when are we meeting for coffee today? Like, well, I think I was maybe 7, and my time with my dad was limited. Yes, I saw him every week, but the reality of the schedule was that, we were with him less than we were with him. And that was hard for Dad because he lived for us and we lived for living with both our parents. But, every Friday before school, he would take my brother and I to get like a baby chino and like a banana bread, or he'd take us out for breakfast before we went to school. And that was our thing. That was not, he'd also get my grandma to come over and do my hair because he couldn't do my hair. And like, I just loved that
I got to test that.
he would, yeah, he would cater to making sure we had what we needed, but he wouldn't apologize for, not, he would ask for support, and he would do anything he could to make sure that we had exactly what we needed. And I remember we were sitting at breakfast one morning. I think my brother had gone on an excursion, so it was just him and I. And he said, Belle, I know you're 7 or I know you're 8, whatever age I was very young. He said, but we're going to be doing this when you're a teenager and when you're an adult and when you have your own kids. We're still going to be doing this because that was a commitment that he made to me, that no matter what, our relationship would always be that strong, that we could sit and love each other's company. But like to the extent of whatever we're going through in life. And that was him saying, no matter what, I'm here in whatever capacity that is, but I'm your dad. And I love and adore you. And it was reciprocated. And like I literally said, I've got a text message saying, when are we meeting for coffee today? And, this is what our relationship looks like now. I don't live with him anymore, but that foundation has never changed and it's never wobbled because we've both committed to it. But really, he led from the front as the dad, which is so important. Your kid is a kid. You're the adult. You're the dad. No matter how old they are, he's still the adult in our relationship. And that is absolutely pivotal throughout your entire relationship with your daughter, throughout your entire relationship with your son. He's done the same for my brother. You know, we speak to our dad every day because he built that relationship. But again, not without the work. So put in the work, love your kids, show your kids that you're not perfect, and that's okay. But just because you're not perfect doesn't mean that you don't have to be there for your kids and show up every day in whatever capacity that might be.
That's awesome. You know, and that is the whole reason behind for Mediocre Dads, and why I say what I say, where being mediocre is a choice and you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. And you know, it's a slogan I created, you know, just kind of trying to think of something, and I thought like, yeah, this is good enough. But now when I say it and when I'm able to say it and it resonates with somebody, or it actually has meaning behind it, it puts a smile on my face, because, you know, I'm just like, I never imagined that where I was a year and a half ago when I started Mediocre Dad to now, that saying where people were like, no, that's really cool, or that means something to me because I understand what that means. And so that's awesome. And I think it's so, your whole experience, everything about you is amazing. It's awesome. I appreciate you coming on.
You.
I appreciate you sharing your story with me, you know, because it's awesome to hear others' experiences and being like, man, like there was a whole other world outside of my world when I was growing up, right? Because as when we're young, we're just very selfish. Let's just be honest. We're very selfish, and we're like, oh no, everything revolves around me. Everybody else is just NPCs, just waiting for me to be the main character to jump in and be like, I'm back, I'm here. What are we doing? You know what I mean? Like they're just watching you. So it's amazing. But before we go, you know, where can people find you? What's the best place for people to learn more about you, to read your blog, to kind of just to understand more who Bella is? Where can people go?
Yeah, so A Kid with Two Homes is a blog. You can find it at www.akidwithtwohomes.com. On that website, you can see a bit about me. You can read the blog. There's numerous blogs on there. You can also see other podcasts and collaborations that I've done. And hopefully this podcast will be up on there too. But you can also find us for more accessible ways on Instagram, A Kid with Two Homes, TWO. And there I just post, you know, some quotes and some really useful, quick things that you can have a look at to help either your kids or yourself if you are a kid of divorce. So that's where you can find me. But thank you so much for having me on this today, Hugh. I absolutely love what you do, and I really appreciate what you do, and I love the genuine conversation with you. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Hey guys, don't worry. Everything, all of her social media, her blog, it will be in the description below, so you can easily access it very easily and kind of check that out. Because of course, I want you to check out her stuff, right? I think it's very important what she's doing, and you know, grow it as much as possible. But that's all I got for you guys. Thanks for watching. Remember, being mediocre is a choice, and you have to refuse to be mediocre every single day. I'm your host, Juan. I go by